So here we go. We are going to cover DNS in this session. One thing that I would like to point out is as we go through, or when you do this on your own, wherever you see root at master DNS, wherever you see this, know that master DNS refers to your master server. So as we did in class, if you are using your IP address or your machine as the master, this will represent your host name. And whatever is here after the @ symbol, you need to copy this verbatim in all of the documents. And as you go through the exercises and as you go through the files and make changes, anywhere you see master DNS, we already covered that, you will put your host name. And anywhere you see MTS local,
you will put mtsitclass.com.
Okay, so let's get into the lesson. So we're going to use this machine as the primary machine. And the IP address for this primary machine is 10.1.13.248. This machine is going to be the master machine, and we have an IP address that's going to be the secondary machine, but we are not going to cover the secondary machine in this particular video. This video is going to cover the steps that we go through to get through the master machine. So the first thing that we have to do is install bind. So yum install bind wildcard. It's going to install, yes, here. It's going to install the packages. And the first configuration file that we have to make changes to is going to be the named.conf file. So we're going to wait till this thing finishes installing, and we're going to make those changes. Alright, there, it's done. Now typically what I would do is start the service now, but since some of you started the service after you made the changes to configuration files, I'm going to make the changes to the configuration files first, then start the service. And if we get any errors, we're going to troubleshoot those errors together. So we're not going to start the service. We are going to go to the etc named.conf file, and there's a lot of changes in here that we're going to make. So the first, let me set the lines. So the first change we're going to have to make is going to be on line 11, and all we're going to do is add the master DNS. Correction. All we're going to do here is add the master DNS IP. Insert. Going to be after space, and this IP address is 10.1.13.248. And just going to put a note over here. And the next thing we're going to do is going to go down to the allow query. And next to localhost, we are going to put the IP range for the master DNS IP. So we should all know that the primary IP address for MTS is going to be 10.1.12.0. Well, for this particular server that holds all of our virtual machines, that's the IP address. And then it has a CIDR of 24. It's going to be a colon after that, space. And I just realized I didn't put it here. It's going to be a semicolon, not colon, semicolon there. And we are just going to put at the end here IP range. And there's a line in the documentation that is not in here. We're going to add that line now. The IP address that goes on this line, the allow transfer line, is the secondary IP address. I'm going to use 10.1.12.139 semicolon. Close it out. Another semicolon, and we're just going to call this secondary IP address. Correction, secondary DNS IP. So we're going to continue through escape mode. We're going to continue through documentation and line 37 through line 40. And right after line 40, we have, so on line 41, we have to insert information. And we are going to insert the information from the documentation exactly as it is written. So zone. So the documentation says MTS.local. This is where we're going to put MTS IT class.com. On this line here at the zone, we are going to put the IP range first three out text backwards. So we use 10.1.12.0. So the first three out text are 10.1.12. So we're going to put 12.1.10. It goes in backwards. And that is the end of this file. So we're going to save this file. And now we are going to create our forwarding zones. And again, typically I would have started the service before I edited that file and created our forwarding zones, but because a couple had edited the files first, then try to start the service and had some issues, we're doing it that way. So we're going to create the forwarding zone. Then we're going to create the reverse zone. Then we're going to start the service and adjust IP tables and so on and so forth. And so the forward zone, we create that by making a file in the var name directory. And the file is going to be forward.mts. And we have to copy text from the documentation exactly as it is written or typed. So I'm going to go through that process and just follow along. So right here, the text says master DNS. So as I covered, whatever the host name for the machine that we're on is going to go over to master DNS. So the host name for this machine is Heath. The documentation says MTS.local, and for that we will put .mtsitclass.com. So what goes here will be the date followed by the number 01. Today's date is the 31st. Correction, today's date is the 30th. So now this is where we save the file, save the forward zone. Now we're going to create the reverse zone and name it reverse.mts. And again, this is where we're going to put in the information from the documentation exactly as it's typed in the documentation. Same formatting and everything, and we're just going to replace the master DNS MTS.local and so on and so forth with the appropriate information. Now we're going to save this file, and that is all the information that needs to go into those 3 configuration files. Now we are going to start the DNS service. Service named start, and we got no errors. So if you did receive an error when running the service name start command after you configure those files, is because there was a typo or error made somewhere within those files. So once we start the service, we're going to turn it on to make it persistent upon reboot. And I just, for some reason, just like to double check. And it is. So now we're going to configure IP tables. And in configuring our IP tables, all we have to do is open port 53. We can do that from the IP tables configuration file, or we can do that from the command line. So I'm just going to do it from the command line. TCP protocol, D port, port 53. And we're going to do it again. The UDP protocol. Change this to UDP. I want it in caps though. And since we did it from the command line, we have to save. So it's going to be service, IP tables, save. And then we have to restart the IP table service. And there it is. Once we do that, we can test the DNS configuration. So the first part of the test is checking the name.com files for any grammatical errors. So we're going to run the name, check conf, etc named.conf. So since we got just the return, that means there is no errors there. And to make sure that the forward MTS and the reverse MTS configuration files were done correctly, we're going to check those also. So we got OK for the forward, and we're just going to check the reverse MTS. We got OK there. So that's the conclusion of this video. That is the first part, configuring the primary server for DNS. And the second video, we will configure the secondary server and then go into the client. Thanks for watching.